You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this is your Red Pill News. Well, guys, we've got several stories to go over today. First of all, the chief of staff for AOC is under investigation for campaign finance violations. Also, some troubling news coming out of the FBI. Looks like Peter Strzok has been accepted back into their good graces. Also, Maria Bartiromo reporting on information related to George Papadopoulos and the entrapment scheme against him. And finally, Judicial Watch is suing California over the law in which they enacted trying to make sure that President Trump does not get on the ballot in 2020. We're going to go over all of this in just a moment after a brief word from my sponsor. Imagine for a second you're downtown. You're just walking along the sidewalk minding your own business when suddenly a horn blares. You look around and there's a truck. It's completely out of control and it's bearing down on you. Would you just stand there and look at it? Of course you wouldn't. Right now, there is a truck bearing down on all of us, and there are horns blaring all over the place. I'm talking about the stock market. It's out of control, it's way too high, and the brakes are failing. You need to jump somewhere safe and let it roll past you. Precious Metal Alley is your escape, and Noble Gold knows the way there, and their analysts are lining up in favor of gold. Phil Flynn, a senior market analyst at Price Futures Group, says gold is definitely in breakout mode. That's going to go higher. The sleeping giant has awoken, spurred by the Fed's and ECB's more dovish rate outlook, along with a spattering of geopolitical risk. Give them a call now, and they'll show you how to survive the collision that's coming. Call 877-646-5347 or go to noblegoldinvestments.com. Call today, and if you qualify for a gold or silver IRA, you will receive a free 5-ounce America the Beautiful silver coin delivered to your doorstep for free. So call and see if you qualify for this offer. Once again, that's 877-646-5347. All right, thanks for sticking around. First of all, the news on Saikat Chakrabarti under federal investigation for campaign violations. This is AOC's once former chief of staff. Here she is right here, pictured with Chakrabarti. Now, in April, the Coolidge-Reagan Foundation, a First Amendment watchdog, filed another complaint against Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, this time targeting her and her campaign manager, Saikat Chakrabarti. Spanning nearly 50 pages and levying more than 20 counts against Ocasio-Cortez, Chakrabarti, and the entities they created to carry out the unlawful dark money scheme that they were engaged in. The complaint provides the most in-depth analysis of Ocasio-Cortez's various campaign finance violations to date. According to a complaint filed with the Federal Election Commission in March, 2 PACs founded by Ocasio-Cortez's top aide, Saikat Chakrabarti, funneled over $1 million in political donations into 2 of its own private companies, and that was reported by the Washington Examiner. Now, Foundation counsel Dan Backer, who authorized the complaint, sent the Gateway Pundit this statement. The subsidy scheme carried out by AOC and her campaign manager involved some of the most egregious campaign violations ever recorded. Perhaps even more egregious is AOC's hypocrisy on the matter, as she continues to portray herself as a campaign finance reformer. It's time for the Federal Election Commission and all Americans to hold AOC accountable and say no to her self-serving brand of socialism. On Friday, AOC Chief of Staff Saikat Chakrabarti resigned suddenly from his post as AOC's Chief of Staff, and now this. Federal agencies are investigating alleged campaign finance misconduct by Democratic New York Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's former Chief of Staff. Once again from the Washington Examiner, the probe focuses on 2 political action committees started by Saikat Chakrabarti, concerns about which were first reported by Washington Examiner in March. Chakrabarti left his post as Chief of Staff for Ocasio-Cortez along with Communications Director Corbin Trent, who is departing for the freshman Congresswoman's 2020 re-election campaign. Chakrabarti stirred up plenty of controversy during his tenure as the creative mind behind Ocasio-Cortez's campaign and strategist for the Green New Deal. He has sent out numerous tweets that started a clash between Ocasio-Cortez and the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and many staffers and aides on Capitol Hill were not thrilled about his divisive behavior. Now, I would not be surprised if the Democrats had a hand in helping these complaints be brought against Chakrabarti. He did a lot to really upset them and kind of increase that divide that existed between Pelosi and Ocasio-Cortez. Now, the things that they were doing, they certainly were funneling money out of the campaign and into an LLC, which had a very similar name to the campaign committee. We're definitely going to have to keep a close eye on this because this is not a small matter, and Chakrabarti could be looking at being in some big, big trouble. Now, as promised, apparently Christopher Wray has welcomed Peter Strzok back into the FBI. This is from True Pundit. Almost 1 year after he was fired from his top post at FBI, Peter Strzok is back in the building and the FBI's good graces. Strzok is in the HQ building all the time, one FBI insider revealed. He is taking meetings or part of meetings. What? FBI sources confirm Strzok has been granted access to FBI facilities in Washington, D.C., and its headquarters building on numerous occasions since he was sacked in August of 2018. Strzok has also not been stripped of his security clearances, incredibly, an FBI insider told us. Strzok, is getting in with a visitor's badge and is involved in meetings, one FBI insider said. Maybe they are all trying to get their story straight before things go public. I think that's probably pretty much what's happening. Such things include declassification of the FISA warrant the FBI used to spy on the campaign of Donald Trump. One of the warrants is scheduled to be declassified and released this summer. However, FBI Director Christopher Wray is trying to delay its release, sources have said, and apparently at all costs. While Americans were under the impression that Strzok was a disavowed FBI insider, that is not the case. Even top FBI officials are wondering how and why Strzok has been allowed to come back into FBI headquarters. Likewise, FBI sources said when Strzok is not at the Hoover Building, he has been holding meetings with high-level DOJ brass at a location across the street from the Bureau's Pennsylvania Avenue base. But why? Christopher Wray is not letting on as to why that is happening. The FBI fired Strzok, who helped lead the Bureau's investigation of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election, until officials discovered he had been sending anti-Trump text messages. The termination was a remarkable downfall for Strzok, a 22-year member of the Bureau who investigated Russian spies, defense officials accused of selling secrets to China, and a myriad of other important cases. In the twilight of his career, Strzok was integral to two of the Bureau's most high-profile investigations, the Russia case and the inquiry into Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server while she was Secretary of State. But when a Department of Justice Inspector General investigation uncovered politically charged messages that Strzok had exchanged with FBI attorney Lisa Page, his lover, he was relegated to a position in human resources. Conservatives soon made Strzok the face of their attacks against Special Counsel Robert Mueller III's investigation of the president's campaign, and the FBI took steps to remove Strzok from its ranks. This story is developing, and you can bet we're going to be following up on it. Now, one thing I do want to mention is, remember, Peter Strzok not only held a position with the FBI, he was also employed by the clowns in America. Perhaps he's still getting in based upon his relationship with them, and his security clearances are also given through them, not necessarily through the FBI. But like was stated in the article, I think they might be trying to get their story straight. It's going to be very, very messy when this all comes out, and every day we know that more information is being released. Perhaps why we had those terrible events happen over this past weekend in El Paso and Dayton, and that's why they needed something to cover this up. All right, now Maria Bartiromo is reporting that transcripts will show George Papadopoulos rejected helper's offer for help from the Russians. He said that would be treason. Retired Congressman Trey Gowdy on Sunday called for the transcript of Papadopoulos' September 2016 meeting with deep state spy Stefan Halper to be released. Gowdy says there is exculpatory evidence in the transcript, and the FBI hid the information from the FISA court. Gowdy also told Fox Business host Maria Bartiromo that there are even more transcripts. Papadopoulos told Bartiromo that the transcript of his conversation with Halper will prove he didn't take the bait when Halper brought up Hillary's hacked emails. Papadopoulos told Stefan Halper that it would be treason to accept help from the Russians, and that was according to Maria. Are you kidding me? That's treason. People get hanged for stuff like that. I would never do something like that, Papadopoulos allegedly told Stefan Halper in a September 2016 meeting in London. What you just described is textbook exculpatory information. It tends to show that a person did not commit a crime, Gowdy said. And this is big news. Recall in September of 2016, Stefan Halper reached out to Papadopoulos out of nowhere by email and offered to pay him $3,000 and a trip to London under the guise of needing his expertise on energy dealings. This was after Halper met with Trump's other campaign advisor, Carter Page, in July of 2016. When Halper met up with Papadopoulos in London, he brought along a honeypot posing as his assistant. This honeypot, who used the alias Azra Turk, was also an FBI informant. Papadopoulos previously said Azraturk was acting seductively to try to get information out of him, but that he didn't take the bait. The FBI and the clowns ran several informants at Papadopoulos, and they still failed to get him to take the Russians have Hillary's emails bait, which is why Papadopoulos was only charged with a process crime. The entire Trump-Russia witch hunt was based on lies, and not one Russian approached Papadopoulos, and he was actually targeted for his energy dealings with the country of Israel. Now, we're going to go ahead and watch this little clip here, and we'll be right back.
Developments on another front as fallout continues from the Mueller investigation and the former special counsel's recent House testimony. One name connected to the launch of the Russia probe was mentioned more than 30 times during the Mueller hearings. That name, George Papadopoulos, the former Trump campaign advisor. My guest this morning says the FBI owes America an explanation on how that investigation began. We're back with former South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy. He was the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. He is now a Fox News contributor. And Congressman, I want to ask you about a conversation you and I had a couple of months ago, which really went viral after we talked about it. And it was about talking about an informant having a conversation with George Papadopoulos, which you actually saw the transcript, and we have not seen that transcript. It's still classified, and I'm wondering why not. You said that's a game changer, that one transcript.
It certainly has the potential to be. Why you haven't seen it yet, I am lost. I am clueless. It is not that level of classification that's going to impact relationships with our allies. It goes to a fundamental precept we have in this country that when there is exculpatory information tending to show a person did not commit a crime, that information is every bit as important as any inculpatory. So the transcripts are important for two reasons. Number one, to buttress that fundamental precept, but also think about all the questions you and your viewers have. Maria, when did the investigation begin? The FBI and the DOJ said it was never intended to investigate the Trump campaign, just Russia. Okay, great. Show us the transcripts. Show us what questions you coached the informants or the cooperating witnesses to ask of the Trump campaign officials. If it's not about the campaign, then you win. You're right. But if you're veering over into the campaign or your questions are not solely about Russia, then you've been misleading us for 2 years. The good thing about transcripts, they don't have to remember. All you got to do is read them.
Yeah.
They don't have bad memories.
Now,
just release the transcripts, and we can tell for ourselves when it began and what it was about.
Now, I want you to know that I spoke with George Papadopoulos last night because I was wanting to get ready for this interview because you have alluded to this. You haven't told us enough. You haven't told us much because I know it's classified and you can't, but I know you saw it. George Papadopoulos told me last night that the memo and the transcript that you're referring to is from a conversation that he had with Stephen Halper, and it was in London. It was at the Sofitel Hotel in London where Stephen Halper said something to him like, well, you know, Russia has all these all these emails of Hillary Clinton, and, you know, when they get out, that'd be really good for you, right? Would you help? That'd be really good for you and the Trump campaign if all those emails got out, right? And George Papadopoulos answered and said, that's crazy. Are you kidding me? That would be treason. People get hanged for stuff like that. I would never do something like that. That transcript that George Papadopoulos told me is still classified. Now, I know you can't admit if that's it or not, but let me just say, if that is basically the conversation, that should have been given to the FISA court, right? That should have made public to at least show us that George Papadopoulos had that question asked of him, and he said, are you nuts? That's treason.
Only if you want a justice system that's fair. I mean, that's the only reason it should be produced to a court, is if you want a justice system that treats people justly and fairly. That, what you just described, is textbook exculpatory information. It tends to show the person did not commit a crime. A crime, by the way, Maria, he was never charged with. I mean, Papadopoulos was charged with a process crime, but never with colluding with Russia. But it also speaks to what the FBI and the department were doing back in 2016. Was their target Russia or was their target the Trump campaign? We're not going to know until you make the transcripts public. The one you referenced is a single transcript. There are going to be others.
Wow, there are going to be others. And that happened in September of 2016. So that was breaking news. That's the transcript. I got the confirmation from Papadopoulos yesterday. Trey, I want to take a short break. Then I've got to ask you about one of your good friends, John Ratcliffe. We've got breaking news on that as well. He withdrew his nomination for the DNI job. We'll be right back with that.
As you can see, there's a reason they are not releasing this transcript. If this transcript came out, it would be considered exculpatory evidence, and it would show that George Papadopoulos never intended to collude with the Russians and that they were being entrapped by people in the former failed presidential administration who were trying to get them to do things that were illegal. I love Trey Gowdy. Long hair, don't care. He always needs a haircut, but he doesn't even mind. Doesn't bother him at all. Okay, moving on to the last story. All right, so Judicial Watch is suing the state of California over the law that they passed, which is aimed at keeping Trump off the 2020 primary ballot. Conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch filed a federal lawsuit on behalf of 4 California voters to prevent the state from implementing a new law requiring all presidential candidates to publicly disclose their tax returns in order to appear on the primary ballot. The lawsuit argues that the law is politically motivated and therefore unconstitutional. The lawsuit is in response to a new law signed by far-left California Governor Gavin Newsom requiring presidential candidates to publicly release the last 5 years of their tax returns in order to appear on the primary ballot. Obviously, this law is aimed at keeping Trump off the 2020 primary ballot since he refuses to publicly release his tax returns. Democrat candidates such as Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and others have not released their tax returns yet either. Now, via Judicial Watch, under the law known as the Presidential Tax Transparency and Accountability Act, candidates who do not publicly release their tax returns are barred from having their names printed on California's primary ballots. Judicial Watch alleges that SB 27 imposes candidate qualifications beyond those allowed by the U.S. Constitution and impermissibly burdens a voter's expressive constitutional and statutory rights. The lawsuit claims violations of the U.S. Constitution's Qualifications Clause, the First and 14th Amendments, and 42 U.S.C. 1983 and 1988. The Judicial Watch complaint further alleges the political nature of the law, which is totally divorced from the state's legitimate constitutional role in administering and establishing procedures for conducting federal elections. None of the interests proffered by the California legislature for requiring the disclosure of candidates' tax returns is related to election procedure or administration. Rather, the stated interests incorporate particular substantive judgments about what is most important for voters to know when considering a candidate, how voters should go about estimating the risk of a candidate engaging in corruption, and what might assist law enforcement in detecting violations of the Emoluments Clause and crimes such as insider trading. Unless SB 27 is enjoined, states will assume the power to create their own qualifications for national candidates seeking to obtain a party's nomination for president. This could lead to as many as 50 distinct and possibly inconsistent sets of qualifications regarding the only national election in the United States. Using rationales similar to California's, states might come to demand medical records, mental health records, sealed juvenile records, driving records, results of intelligence, aptitude, or personality tests, college applications, Amazon purchases, Google search histories, browsing histories, or Facebook friends. California politicians, in their zeal to attack President Trump, passed a law that not only unconstitutionally victimizes California voters, said Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton, it is an obvious legal issue that the state can't amend the U.S. Constitution by adding qualifications in order to run for president. The courts can't stop this abusive law fast enough. Excellent points from Tom Fitton there. This is absolutely unconstitutional. This is a national election. The qualifications for running at the national level should be set by the federal government. If we have all of these various 50 states providing their own qualifications for people to get on the ballots, it's going to get very, very messy. And clearly, this is only built to stop Donald Trump from getting onto the ballot and from winning yet again. All right, folks, that is all that I have for you today. I want to thank everyone for joining me. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless.